Hello, everyone. Long day, right? Is the caffeine level okay? Because, I'm talking about testing, and it's generally boring, to be quite honest with you. I've been on the field quite a lot. Like, my role in Puppet is basically close to pre-sales, like visiting customers and trying to understand, like, what are their requirements, what they are doing, maybe what they have been doing with Puppet open source. And I've seen a lot of things. I've seen good code. I've seen bad code. What I really haven't seen is maybe that much of future-proofing. Like, code is growing. It's growing a lot, sometimes uncontrollably. And people don't really take the time to think about testing their code. Okay, and I'm going to talk about like different ways of testing your code, like from the basic stuff to unit testing and so on. But it's starting to become like the whole status quo. I remember when the status quo was actually using infrastructure as code, like adopting solutions like Puppet. Funny enough, it's now looking like the status quo is like, yeah, I have my infrastructure running, I have my current Puppet version, let's not go from there. I hear a lot of excuses, like the regular ones, like the same ones we heard when the question was adopting or not adopting Puppet. And it's generally time. They say, I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time to write unit tests. I don't have time to review my code. I don't have time to refactor. It's working. Let's leave it like that. The truth is, and I took this from a colleague, of the about 650,000 hours you'll spend in this planet, you'll spend about 10 years of your life working like continuously. That's less than 1/6 of your life, so let's honestly make it as meaningful as possible. I don't know if the cable went. We'll wait for a sec to check if the video comes back, or I can just unplug it and plug it again. Okay, good. So this is the fun part. Like, this was me, age 21. I was fairly young. I was very opinionated. As you probably realized, I'm still quite opinionated about things, and I had lots of time. Like, I love doing things manually. If I believe at age 21, like, people started thinking about infrastructure as code, I was like, no way. Like, I'm super comfortable doing stuff my way. And a lot of things have changed since then. Again, that was the status quo back then. And I embrace Puppet because, yeah, let's be honest, Puppet is awesome, but I didn't embrace it on day one. It took me time to understand that things need to change. I had quite a few wrong ideas about what infrastructure should look like. Like, you probably went through some of those ideas as well. But again, it's better now. We have infrastructure as code. We have Puppet. But then again, I started like getting into some different level of different kind of issues. What if, like, I want people to contribute to my code? Like, what if someone needs to reuse my code? Other people need to understand what I'm writing. Okay, needs to have proper indentation. It needs to conform to style guides. What about when I need to refactor my code? Can I do it again? No, I'm losing the video again. Too bad. You want me to try HDMI? Wait. Okay. So you missed the joke probably, but like.
Sorry, I just have to double check it all.
Yeah, don't worry.
So.
Great. So what about version 2.0? How do I know that my code is still conforming to the initial standards? What if the language change? That surely never happens, right? Like, how many people in the room are actually adopting the new parser and the new features? Okay, so not a lot, but It's definitely on the back of your head. So I need to find new tooling. Okay. I need to make my development procedure consistent. And I'm pretty sure like everyone in the room knows Puppet Parser Validate. Okay. What it does, basically your code makes sense. It doesn't mean that your code actually does something. It means it makes sense. Okay. Programming is like writing a book, except if you miss a comma, the whole book doesn't make sense. So you've probably seen this a million times, but just in case you didn't, if you go with Puppet Parser, validate, with some bit of bad code, it will tell you that code is wrong. Okay, now, then again, I'm going to go with an example of a good code. As you can see, this is valid. Now, this actually doesn't mean anything. Okay, this just means that it has the right syntax format. It's not like you shouldn't use it. It's that it's not the complete picture. Go back to my presentation. Then we got Puppet lint. Okay. Checking your code with Puppet lint basically means that your code is readable, that someone else can understand it. It's another thing. Like, I mean, if someone else is going to read my code, I could just try to make it easier for them, that I have the right indentation, that I put in the code blocks in the right place, that I'm using single quotes or double quotes. Again, just like with Puppet Parser Validate, I could quickly show you. Let me see if I'm the right one. Great. No, this one. So Puppet lint. Have to see the screen, sorry about that. So I have a bit of good code, and I have a bit of bad code. If you want these examples, they are available on GitHub. Finally, let's talk a little bit about probably the one you know less, which is unit testing. Unit testing is actually taking like the smallest part of your code and checking if it works. When it comes to Puppet, it's actually looking in a compile catalog if the resources you are expecting are there and are configured as desired. Either with RSpec Puppet. Okay. This is behavioral-driven development. Like you write your code, you write a set of tests, you evaluate a certain condition. Okay, like to give you a quick example, if I'm running on a Debian system, this is the name of the package I should install. Or if I'm running on a Red Hat system, this is what I should find in the catalog. Okay. If you're using Puppet Module Generate for kind of your module skeleton, like 90% of the stuff you need is already there. Just to show you real quick, let's have a look into that. So, what do I have here? Okay. So I'm just going to create a quick module. Module generate, demo dash puppetconf. I'm just going to go with all defaults. Great. Ooh. There we go. Okay. So what are kind of the important parts when it comes to testing, like the files that are directly related to what RSpec does? So you have a file that is basically your fixtures.yaml file. I'm just going to show you one that is more complete from a different module. How about this one? Okay. Your fixture.yaml file is basically as follows. You're probably reusing code already. Okay? So you need to explain to RSpec where to get the rest of your code. And what you're basically doing, I don't know if you can see that clearly, but it's just listing the other module dependencies you need. Okay? Like for instance, in this particular module, I'm using standard lib. Okay, so I need bits of standard lib to actually compile my catalog and see if my module runs as expected. Then you'll have a gem file. Like, I'm not a Ruby expert, so I'm just going to make it as easier as possible. So in your gem file, you would list the gems that you need to run your tests. Okay, as you can imagine, traditional Puppet, Factor, and so on. You would need RSpec and the Puppet Lab spec helper, okay, which is the actual glue that ties it all together. And you would need a rake file, which is basically as a CMake file, but for Ruby, where you define the task you would run, okay? And of course, you would need tests. Now, to write those tests, probably what you want to do is just go to your original requirements. Like, someone at some point asked you to do a module to do like a particular set of things. As you will see, the syntax on RSpec is like pretty much that. Is should do something, should contain this, should include a class. Okay? This is just an example from one of my modules. Now, just another interesting thing, wouldn't it be possible to actually write your tests before your code? And I'm not going to go very deep into this, but that's what you would generally call test-driven development, okay? It's very useful because you are ensuring that you declare your requirements. So how you do it is you create a set of tests, then you would create a minimum viable product in code to actually satisfy those tests, okay? Then you fix your tests, you iterate on your code. But basically, you can see, and going back to what I was saying before, this is a great tool to ensure that while I'm changing my code, it's actually always conforming to those initial standards. I'm not going to go very deeply into the syntax in RSpec. It's pretty well documented. But again, this is about time, so I would love to give you a couple of shortcuts. And this is a pretty good one. There is a gem called Retrospec that basically would evaluate your code and actually go and create a set of tests for it, okay? Don't think that this is just a magical solution. It will probably get you 90% there. So basically what it will do is evaluate what resources you have in your catalog and actually build a test to match it. It won't go into conditionals, like in the sense of, if I have if operating system or whatever and evaluate different variables. But you can just expand on that and just write your test case on your own. Let me show you real quick. So, great. So, to go here. So this is actually a module that has a set of tests. I could go to the spec directory, and I could go to my classes, and I'm going to go with the, I think it's this, no, it's bphase.pp, is spec. Okay, so I have a particular test case, and this is what I would expect to find in the catalog. I would expect a particular file, I would expect a particular package in the latest version, and some other. I'm just going to run my test. Okay. And basically what it will do is clone the fixtures from wherever repository I need. It will compile a catalog, and it will look for those elements in the catalog. Okay, so in this case, I found the three of them. I have found a file, I found a package, and I found a particular service. Now, let's assume I'm actually collaborating on this, and someone goes and wants to have this code running Debian. So he goes and let's assume for a sec that he changes the name of the service. So I'm going to go to manifest base.pp. And as SHD is called for some reason SSH on Debian, he goes and changes this. When he tries to commit this, a unit test would actually fail. Why? because basically it's not conforming to the specifications you previously declared. Okay, so you can see like two of the things I expected to find, I found. One I didn't find. Okay, it's a double control. It really enables collaboration. Now let me show you Retrospec real quick. So I'm going to turn my code back. Great, and I'm going to delete my tests. Okay, I'm just running a cleanup script that basically to show you it's a bunch of rm-rf. Okay, so Retrospec, Puppet. As I told you, basically, it will go and create those files I mentioned before. Like it will go out, create your gem file, your fixtures. It will even create Git hooks, and I'll go into Git hooks a little bit later, but it will look into my Puppet code, and it will say, okay, this is stuff I'm finding on the catalog. This is the stuff I should test for. Now I can basically run that test again, and I can safely develop into that code, knowing that the initial specifications are already on the test. Okay, as you can see, now it's running. Again, it's not perfect, but if you already have a bunch of Puppet code that you need to refactor, it's a great start. Like if you have a lot of spaghetti code with a number of resources, you can just run Retrospec, and then you can start writing, like more compliant Puppet code. Or if you're migrating to a new version of Puppet, you can actually use that to ensure that whatever you write for your new version of Puppet actually complies with the initial specifications. Okay. Now, again, time. If you actually have to remember to, okay, I changed my bit of code. So first I'm going to write Puppet parser validate, then I'm going to go ahead and run lint, and then I'm going to run a unit test. Just do it automatically. I'm assuming that you should have your code in version control, so just use Git hooks. Okay, just have that run automatically. In the rake file, I don't know if you check the tasks, but basically those are, Retrospec already makes it so it does a parser validate on all your PP files, it runs a lint, and it runs Retrospec. So you can just have a git commit hook that whatever you commit, it just runs that process, and you immediately know if you're breaking something or not. Again, save time. I found some pretty good git hooks on that URL. Basically, you can check the slides later and just copy the URL. Now, since I'm doing bad jokes, I'm going to do another one. Yeah. So here's the thing. As I told you, I'm on the field a lot. So that means I travel a lot around Europe. And I'm Argentinian and an Italian passport living in London. It's a hell of a story to tell when you're going through passport control. Like, I get pulled out on that every time. So again, no man is an island. So you guys are not working alone, okay? Again, we're collaborating. This is a new DevOps world where we have like all rainbows and unicorns. But you could use like server-side Git hooks. Those are pretty useful, but generally what you would like to start doing is having a good CI workflow, okay, where you can continuously have a team collaborating to your code, and that code automatically gets tested, goes through a pipeline, and even gets deployed automatically. There are a lot of tools to do that. Probably the one you heard the most about is Jenkins. Atlassian has one tool. I think it's called Bamboo. The one I'm using is called Travis, and basically, again, as I'm on the field a lot, I just didn't want to manage any infrastructure, and Travis is cloud-based. I'm not telling you use the one I use. I'm telling you use one of them. Just find whichever fits best. So here's what I'm doing with Travis, and I prepared like a lovely cheesy animation to show it. So wherever I do a push, this goes to GitHub that actually sends an API call to Travis. Travis will go and pull that code, and probably this is the best part. It will run 3 jobs. It will test these on 3 different versions, or combinations of versions of the Puppet gem and Ruby. Okay, those are not particularly Like if you go to the documentation of Puppet, I think it's on both the Puppet Enterprise and the open source, you will find a good table saying which versions of Ruby you should marry which versions of the Puppet gem. Okay? And for every job, what I'm doing is I'm running Puppet parser validate, I'm running Puppet lint, and I'm doing a spec test. So basically, every time I commit something to GitHub, I get all this done. And if something fails, if I broke anything, I will get an email notification. Let me show you just real quick how this looks like. So I'm going to go to my module, and I'm going to introduce like a ridiculous change. So I'm going to go to README, and I'm going to add a last line saying tested in PuppetConf. Okay. As I told you, GitHub has an API integrations. That's an R+. I use this for a Forge module, and it's actually quite useful. You can even add a deployed task later to actually get it deployed to the Forge. So I'm going to git add README. Great, and git push origin master. Great, so that's already on GitHub. Now I can go to Travis. So as you can see here in Travis, I have like all branches and all my old jobs. I'm just going to go to the build history, and as you can see, this is kind of all the old stuff, all the old pushes I did. I even have a failed one, and now I have an orange one that is actually like waiting to go and test. So again, as I told you, like this is started now. Let's go to a previous one. As I told you, 3 jobs. Okay, I can actually see the log of the 3 jobs, where you will, when it loads, you will see that it's just, again, validate, Retrospec, and lint. Okay? And this is like super easy to set up because it's just like an OAuth permission where you enable Travis to access GitHub. You do need one thing though, which is a Travis configuration. Now that Travis configuration gets set on, really? I have to bore you again with that animation? Great. So that Travis configuration is set on a .travis.yaml file. This is kind of just a good example you can copy from my module. The Puppet module skeleton, and I left a link in a slide, has a good configuration that it's even like referring to the table of which Ruby versions you should use with each Puppet version. Now, again, this is all great. Now, you can use these tools like for your benefit or just to tick a box. Try to get some value out of it. Like you probably saw some of the tests I'm running, like I'm looking for particular objects in the catalog. It would be just as valid to have a test saying that if a class creates a class. Yeah, it would be valid, but it wouldn't make any sense. Like you could change your code and that would still fail. So actually evaluate your test cases. Okay? Think where your code is going to run. Are you going to run in multiple operating systems? Are you declaring the correct versions? Okay, go back to when you initially whiteboard the module. If you have any picture or anything, try to understand what is it supposed to do. Okay, get your test from there. Review your whole logic structures. If you have an if you have a case, you should definitely have a different test case to evaluate that. There are pretty good test coverage tools to keep you honest. Like Travis, I'm using one that is called Corrarello, which is just on our gem. And just to show you like super quick. Wrong screen, there you go. So this is Corrarello, and this is showing me how much of my code is actually covered by my test. It's not good. It's 40-something%. I need to get better at that. But if I actually let's go to one particular build, okay, you will see like per Puppet file how much I'm actually covering. So this actually would really help you to improve. And you can also set triggers to, like, if your coverage drops below a certain percentage, then send me an email so I can go and write more tests. So just a couple of final points, and ask away if you want. I haven't covered acceptance testing well, here, or integration testing. Okay, that's where you're not evaluating kind of a minimal thing in your code. You're evaluating the whole picture. Puppet has a couple of frameworks to do that. Beaker is probably the newest one, and it was actually developed by us. Or you can use Retrospec, which is quite a bit more generic. Just for you to know, Retrospec also creates like template Beaker jobs. I haven't tried it, but you know what? I might present on that next year. Find a workflow that fits your particular use case. I just gave you tools. Okay, just mix and match however you see fit. Look at the tool that really feels more comfortable to you. If you're using Jira or you're using any other adaptation tools, you can maybe continue going with adaptation to have proper integration with tickets and so on. I have fully documented this workflow on my blog. If you just want to copy it, it's absolutely fine. And finally, if you have any questions, I'm generally on Puppet in Freenode. That being said, I'm generally on a different time zone now that I think about it. But anyway, just if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
So I know you showed Travis. Have you ever used TeamCity?
Nope, haven't tried it.
Have you seen anybody use it well?
TeamCity?
Yeah.
No. It might perfectly work, to be honest. I don't know enough about it. Go test your code, please. And you know what? You got extra 17 minutes. Oh, yeah, go.
So just to check, I hadn't looked at Retrospec before. Is it assuming that your code that you've written matches your specification? Because it sounds like I wasn't.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's not a bad place to start. I just wanted to double check.
It's just a place to start.
Yeah.
Like, it saves you the trouble of writing, quite a few lines of code. But then again, you have to still create your use cases. It won't go into conditionals or anything like that. It will just look into your code and put those resources in a test case.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just wondering, do you have any advice for convincing people to learn enough Ruby to write RSpec tests?
Yes. I don't write Ruby.
What is RSpec in, if not?
No. That's what I'm telling you. I don't
Okay.
write Ruby. And I felt like quite comfortable with RSpec because, again, the language is very natural. As you can see, the structures are like should do something or whatever. I don't think you necessarily have to go as far as knowing Ruby, like being a heavy Ruby programmer to start with. And probably just use most of the shortcuts I mentioned. Again, I'm not a Ruby developer. If you ask me, I'm biased to another language. But yeah.
Hi, I'm curious about coveralls and the fact that it gave a user interface to look at afterwards. Can you go a little more explanation
so
on that?
again, coveralls is a gem. You have to add it to your gem file. When it has very tight integration with Travis, but it could do as well. If you actually go to the coveralls page, it has examples for Jenkins, and I think it even has an example for TeamCity, but I have to double check on that. So once you add the gem, like when the gem detects that it's being run on a CI environment, it will just send all the test results to Corrarello and it will parse it on the interface. If you actually go to the end of the test here, great. You'll see what actually Corrarello is submitting. Of course, when I run that Retrospec manually, it just tells me, yeah, Corrarello this is running manually. Sorry, this is running locally. I'm not submitting any test results. Just Corrarello, like outside RSpec Puppet, I think you can do coverage tests on a number of platforms. Like it has like Ruby gems and it has a Python module, and it's actually pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you very much, guys.